Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be talking about another one of my favorite games of all time from the SNES, and that game in question is Mega Man X. I want to take a look back and see if it's still awesome and still holds up as one of the best SNES games of all time. So get those heart tanks ready and let's take a trip back to 1993. Back in the early 90s when I first started gaming, there was one game in particular that everybody at school was always talking about. That game was the original Mega Man on NES. So of course I had to play it, with my first game being Mega Man 2. This is when I became a huge fan of the character, even though I have never once completed any of the original games outside of Mega Man 3, and it is still the case today where I have not completed any of those games. I do plan to one day though. Fast forward a couple years later to 1993, and I'm walking through an electronics store which I believe was either Electronics Boutique or Babbage's or Software Etc., because this was the pre-GameStop days. I'm browsing the Super Nintendo wall when I see it, Mega Man X. So I asked my dad, what does the X mean? And he said, well, it's a 10 in Roman numerals. So in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, we've gotten to Mega Man 10 already. But that was far from the case, as X was a series that was completely different from the original Mega Man series on the NES. It wouldn't be until later that year at Christmas that I would get to play this game, and it was worth waking up before everyone else that Christmas morning. But I hear you asking, what made it awesome though? Well, I'm going to answer that with some gameplay discussions. This game would take everything from the original series and amp it up to the max. You get everything from tougher enemies to tougher bosses to tougher levels. And when I say anything and everything in this game is trying to kill you, I mean it. Anything and everything will kill you in this game, and you will die many times if you're not careful. Believe me, I have seen that death animation a lot, and it still haunts my dreams today. However, Capcom did add some new abilities to avoid certain death and falling into a lot of the pits that are in this game. They would add the wall climb and the dash ability, and believe me, you're going to be using those a lot trying to get through some of the levels and defeating some of the bosses. Because if you're about to fall into a pit, if you're close enough to the wall, you can actually climb back up by using the wall climb. Just keep in mind that once you hold that button, X will still slide down the wall, so you want to keep jumping on the wall to get back up out of the pit. You can also use the dash and the wall climb together and basically dash and jump across the room, especially jumping over some of the bosses and dashing past some of the bosses while you're fighting them. And with that being said, I actually want to talk about some of the bosses for a little bit. Now, something else that made a return from the original Mega Man games is the boss's weaknesses. So every boss has a weakness to another boss's weapons. So let's say you're fighting Chill Penguin and you know that fire and ice don't mix. So if you use Flame Mammoth's weapon against him, it sets him on fire and defeats him very quickly. And other enemies, such as Armored Armadillo, he's weak to sparks, so you use Spark Mandrill's weapon against him, and it actually knocks his armor off. Now that's not the only thing that affects bosses. If you're using the Boomerang against Launch Octopus and Flame Mammoth, you can actually knock off Launch Octopus's tentacles and make him more vulnerable to attacks, and he also stops shooting homing missiles at you. And if you use it against Flame Mammoth, it actually knocks his trunk off and makes him stop shooting flames at you, which can be very annoying with that boss fight. Now, Sigma's bosses do have weaknesses as well, but the only one I know of is the Rolling Shield against the final Sigma form, and that boss fight is so incredibly irritating, especially when you're using the Rolling Shield, because you have to get very close to him to even get a hit on him. That's where the armor upgrades and health upgrades and sub-tanks come into play, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those and why you need to get those in every single level that you can find them in. Now, when it comes to the collectibles, this game can feel a lot like a Metroidvania title, because there are items that you cannot get unless you have acquired other items first, or other upgrades, or defeated a boss entirely to affect another level. Now what I mean by that is, let's say you're fighting Launch Octopus. When you defeat him, his level then affects Sting Chameleon's level, which floods the entire level, allowing you to get a heart tank much easier. But you also need the helmet capsule and the leg capsule in order to break a brick wall that is blocking your path and get a boost in your jump going across the screen, because there is a giant gap and giant pit in the middle that you can fall into if you're not careful. And it really helps to have the water there, because it gives you a little bit of a slowdown trying to get to the heart tank. And I have seen people do it without the flooding, but I don't recommend it for new players. And I do recommend for new players, at least get everything you can in the game, get all the upgrades, all the health tanks, all the sub tanks, get everything you can, because it will help with those final boss fights, and especially Sigma's final form. Very challenging, very difficult. And the thing with that is that you fight 3 bosses in a row, basically. So you fight Sigma's dog, then you fight Sigma, then you fight Sigma's final form. And if you used up all your health tanks in the first version or the first variant of that fight, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. So you really want to have at least 4. If you have 1, it's not going to help. If you have two, maybe 2 or 3 might help, but you really want to have all 4 of them and have all 4 of them filled up all the way with health all across the board. Now, it is entirely possible to go through the entire game without any of these, but again, for new players, I don't recommend doing that. I recommend just getting everything normally, looking up a guide, finding where everything is, or if you want to do it blindly like I did, just find where everything is in each level. It's pretty easy to find them for most of the part. I know the later Mega Man X games have made it a little more challenging to get some of these upgrades. With Mega Man X4, it was kind of a hassle to get some of them, but just go through the game normally, get everything you can, or if you want to put in the cheat code to unlock everything already before you even get to the final boss, you can do that too. I used to do that a lot, but for PS4 there are trophies related to them, so that's why I'm trying to get everything as I go through the games. So again, for new players, I recommend just playing the game normally. Don't try and do any of the challenging stuff until you're used to the game, which is what I did. I'm a little more used to it now than I was back when I was younger, so I'm able to pull off some of the challenges, but some of them I still can't do, and I really don't want to spend the time trying to do them because it could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour trying to get a certain thing without having an upgrade. Now, when you do come across the health capsules, Dr. Light will show up with a message telling you, hey, here's what is going to happen with this one, here's how it's going to help you throughout the game, and then you basically find those, and he gives you a message each time. Now, every time I saw him, I thought, well, Dr. Light, you were in the old Mega Man games, why are you not here? What's going on? And that's because the game takes place years in the future, and Dr. Light has long passed away between Mega Man and Mega Man X. And I didn't realize that they were 2 different characters until I saw the cartoon episode where X was on it talking to the original Mega Man. So I was like, oh, they are 2 different characters, okay. And then the remake on PSP, Mega Man Maverick Hunter X, actually does explain this a little bit better. And what's cool about that one is that they give you voiceovers, so you can actually listen to what Dr. Light is telling you. Back when I played this game when I was younger, I used to just skip over all of that because I didn't care. I was one of those kids who did not care to read in my games. I just wanted to jump back in and keep playing the game without having to read a bunch of text. Now, as I played through the remake, it gave me a better appreciation for the older games, and now that I go back and play them, I actually read through everything they say and have a little more appreciation for games that did that on the SNES, PS1, and Sega Genesis, and all those systems from back in the 90s. Now, there are 2 arm cannon upgrades that are really cool. One of them is the hadouken from Street Fighter, which is Ryu's special ability, and when you find that capsule, you actually see Dr. Light in a gi with a headband dressed up like Ryu, telling you, hey, this is a special weapon, you can use it here, here's how you use it. And it's basically a button input code similar to Street Fighter. You just gotta input the button code in order to use it. Now, I've never unlocked it because the requirements are to have all the upgrades, all the hard tanks, all the sub tanks filled up all the way, at least 4 lives, and I believe no health depleted from your health bars. So that's always been challenging because it's at the end of Armored Armadillo stage, and that is one of the most challenging stages in the game because that final few minutes you can get hit by pretty much everything trying to get through the mine shaft and everything. So keep that in mind. You need to have those requirements in order to get that armor upgrade. Now, the last armor upgrade I do want to talk about before we jump into the characters is the arm cannon. You can get this 2 different spots in the game. You can either get it from the armor capsule, or you can get it from Zero when he dies, and he does die a lot in this series. So you'll get it from him. He'll be like, hey, take my weapon, and it will help you get through the rest of the game. What I like about it is that it is a super blast pretty much, and it will destroy everything in front of you. Basically, when you hold down the charge button, it turns from blue to green to pink, and then you just shoot it and it goes through everything. It does help defeating some bosses too, and you actually get a trophy on the PS4 and an achievement on the Xbox One called Pretty Devastating in Pink. I thought that was hilarious, a good fun play on words there. So I do recommend getting that one, but you're going to get it anyways. Even if you miss the capsule, you will still get the arm cannon upgrade from Zero, and it really does help, especially if you're going to use some of the enemies' weapons and you hold that charge button. It will launch a super attack for the enemy's weapons as well. And I always saw that in the demo screen, and I said, well, how do I do this? I can't figure out what's going on here. And that's because I hadn't gotten to the Sigma stages at that time, so I didn't know that that was what was required in order to do the supercharged enemy weapons. Now with that, I want to jump into the characters and talk about some of the new characters, some of the returning characters as well. Moving on to the characters, I want to bring up the bosses first. Yes, I know I just talked about them in the gameplay segment, but really, I want to go into a little more detail on them. You are getting your standard 8 robot bosses that you must fight in this game, and then once you defeat them, you get their weapons to beat other bosses as well. Later on, you have to fight the bosses again during the Sigma levels, only This was kind of a prototype stage of the games of the Mega Man X series, because they did away with the portals that would take you to certain bosses. So it's not like, okay, the upper left portal takes me to Cutman, the upper right portal takes me to Woodman, the upper or the down portal takes me to Gutsman. It wasn't like that until later Mega Man X games, where they decided to put the portals back in, and you could be like, okay, I want to take that portal to that boss, that portal to that boss, and you knew which one would take you to which boss. So they basically changed it up just a little bit, and as you're going through the Sigma levels, you fight them as you go through the little portal doors. Everybody knows the Mega Man boss portal doors that take you to the bosses. So as you go through those, you fight a certain boss, and it's not in random order, it's in a specific order. I think Boomerang is the first one you fight, and then Chill Penguin is probably the second one you fight. You kind of can tell which boss you're going to fight in which area, because one spot you show up in water and you're thinking, okay, well, Launch Octopus is going to be right here somewhere, so I'm going to fight him in a couple seconds. Now, as far as the original characters from the old Mega Man series go, Dr. Light is one of 2 characters who does show up in this series. I won't talk too much about who the other one is, but you might figure out who it is when I talk a little bit about Zero. So Dr. Light, yes, he's the only one that shows up in the armor capsules, as I mentioned before, where he gives you the hints and tips on what to do and how to use the armor upgrades. Now, Zero is one of 2 new faces that shows up in this game. He will come to X's rescue a lot in this series. He will get beat up a lot in this series. I believe Zero has died at least 3 times in the Mega Man X series. He's been corrupted once, and he's been decommissioned once. So a lot of bad stuff has happened to Zero, but he did get his own game later on in the form of Mega Man Zero. I may or may not cover that one in a future episode. It is a fun series. I'm currently playing it right now, but I'm not sure if I want to cover that one or not, because I'm not as familiar with it as I am with Mega Man X. Now, the other new face, well, I'm sorry, let me revert back to Zero. You do find out his backstory later on in the Mega Man X series. You find out, and he becomes less mysterious of a character, and you find out more about what's going on with him. You find out who created him, and you're thinking, oh man, this is not good. So it's kind of cool, and it shows that in Mega Man X4 in the form of cutscenes and quick flashes, and you're just like, oh boy, this is not good for the person who created Zero, and it's interesting. Now, you might know who I'm talking about, but for the newcomers, I don't want to spoil it and give it away. I will talk about that once I cover Mega Man X4 in the future. We will get to that, but for fans of the series, you probably already know who I'm talking about, who I'm referring to. Now, the other new face is Sigma. He is the new big bad guy of the series, similar to how Dr. Wily was the big bad guy of the original Mega Man series. Now, originally, Sigma was a good guy, and then he just got converted into the evil, became leader of the Mavericks and everything, and he became the bad guy. The whole time he's trying to get Zero and X to basically defect over to the Mavericks from the Reploids, and it's interesting. Sigma, you don't see him a lot, especially in the first game. You really don't see him a lot. You don't even see him until the area when you get to his levels. Now, I had no idea who the big bad guy was of Mega Man X. When I finally beat the last robot boss and he shows up on the screen, I said, well, who the heck's this guy? And that's when I realized, okay, this is the bad guy, and he does prove to be a huge pain in the neck throughout the game series. Each one of his boss fights gets progressively harder with each game, and I believe Mega Man X4 has to be the absolute toughest version of Sigma. I, for the life of me, could never complete that game or defeat him for as long as I could. I had to actually use a Game Shark in order to defeat him on the PS1. Then when they released the PS4 collection, I used Rookie Hunter mode, and it made it so much easier. Rookie Hunter mode is a lifesaver when you need it to be, but I prefer not to use it if I don't have to. I will only use it if I really need to, but for newcomers, if you want to use it, I will not fault you for that. I encourage people to use the Rookie Hunter mode to just enjoy the game, enjoy the story, go through each game, enjoying it through the Rookie Hunter mode, and then once you're done, give it a try without it, and you do get a trophy if you complete the game without using it. So I am going to go back and try that one again. But as we come to the end of the episode, guys, I want to get my final thoughts on this series, on this game, and what I think about it today. Mega Man X is still one of my absolute favorite games on the SNES, and Mega Man X as a whole is one of my favorite game series of all time. You can find this game pretty much on multiple collections, on the Mega Man X collection for the PS2 and the GameCube. A little harder to come by that one, but I would recommend getting the Legacy collection for either the PS4, Xbox One, or Nintendo Switch. And the good thing about the PS4 and Xbox version, they're both backwards compatible with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. They both come on 2 discs because it's a Legacy Collection 1 and 2. They didn't pull a fast one on you with the Mega Man Legacy Collection and make you buy 2 collections. They just said, here, take 2 collections and call it a day. The series as a whole kind of took a dip in quality around Mega Man X5, and I'll talk about that later, but I just felt like Capcom just stopped caring about the series at that point. They just didn't care. 5 was probably the last one that I played that I truly enjoyed, because 6 I just really don't remember, and I remember the game being in Japanese, and that's a whole different story for another video. But X1, definitely play it, and especially if you play it on the Nintendo Switch and you have the SNES controller, you can actually use that controller to play that game, which is a really cool addition to that. I really like that they added that in there. But guys, we've come to the end of the episode, and I would like to know, what is your favorite Mega Man X title of all time, or your favorite Mega Man game of all time? Please let me know down in the comments below. I would like to thank you again for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I always enjoy making these videos because it gives me a chance to revisit the past and introduce these older games to a newer audience who might be interested in trying them out for themselves. But it also gives me a chance to bring back the memories to those older fans who used to play these games back in the 90s and early 2000s, such as myself. But as always, guys, be sure to hit that thumbs up and ring that bell to be notified of when videos go live. Share with your friends and family, and I'll see you next time.